There are some lessons you can only learn through experience. And for Sigma males, some of those lessons come at a cost that's almost too high to pay. These aren't comfortable truths. But if you're young enough, smart enough, or lucky enough to hear them before you have to learn them the hard way, you might save yourself years of regret. I'm going to share 7 brutal truths that most Sigma males don't realize until it's too late to do anything about them. These aren't theories or motivational nonsense. These are hard-earned lessons from men who walked the path before you and paid the price for their ignorance. Some of these will make you uncomfortable. Some might make you angry. But I guarantee that if you're a Sigma male, you'll recognize yourself in at least a few of these. And if you're smart, you'll adjust your approach before you learn these lessons the expensive way. Let's get into it. Harsh truth 1. Your independence becomes isolation if you're not careful. When you're younger, your independence feels like a superpower. You don't need anyone. You're fine on your own. You can handle whatever comes your way without relying on others. It's liberating. But what starts as healthy independence can slowly turn into unhealthy isolation without you even noticing the transition. You get used to doing everything yourself. You stop reaching out. You decline invitations so often that people stop inviting you. You become so comfortable alone that being around others starts to feel uncomfortable. Your preference for solitude becomes an inability to connect. And then one day you wake up and realize you're not independent anymore. You're just alone. And there's a massive difference between choosing to be alone and having no choice because you've pushed everyone away. The harsh truth is that humans are social animals, even Sigma males. You might need less social interaction than most people, but you still need some. And if you're not careful, your commitment to independence can leave you completely isolated in middle age with no meaningful connections to sustain you. I've seen older Sigma males who took their independence too far. They spent their 20s and 30s building their careers, pursuing their goals, maintaining their boundaries. And now they're in their 50s and 60s, successful by every material measure and profoundly lonely. They have money, but no one to share experiences with. They have freedom, but no one who cares how they use it. They have independence, but it just means they're independent and alone. And the worst part? By the time they realize what happened, it's much harder to build new relationships. The people who would have been lifelong friends got pushed away 20 years ago and moved on. The potential partners who would have been compatible are already married. The community they could have been part of formed without them. You can't get those years back. You can't rebuild a social foundation in your 50s that you should have maintained in your 30s. The lesson? Independence is essential. But make sure you're being independent by choice, not by default. Maintain at least a few meaningful connections even when your instinct is to be alone. You'll need them later more than you realize. Harsh truth. 2. Not everyone deserves an explanation, but some people do. Sigma males are famous for the disappearing act. Someone crosses a boundary, violates trust, or proves incompatible, and the Sigma just vanishes. No explanation, no discussion, just gone. This approach works fine for casual acquaintances, toxic people, and relationships that were never that deep to begin with. But using it as your default response to every relationship problem is a mistake you'll regret. Because eventually, you'll do this to someone who actually mattered, someone who respected your boundaries, someone who was genuinely trying, someone who deserved better than to be ghosted without understanding what went wrong. And years later, you'll think about that person. You'll realize they were actually one of the good ones. And you'll feel a genuine regret about how you handled things. Not because you were wrong to leave, but because you were wrong to leave without giving them basic human courtesy. I've talked to Sigma males in their 40s who still think about relationships they ended abruptly in their 20s. Not because they want those people back, but because they know those people deserved an explanation and they didn't give one. That regret doesn't go away. The harsh truth is that your time is valuable. Yes. Your energy is precious. Yes. But that doesn't mean everyone who cares about you should be treated with the same dismissive exit strategy you use for people who don't matter. There's a difference between protecting your boundaries and being unnecessarily cruel. And disappearing without a word on someone who invested genuine care in you falls into the cruel category, even if that wasn't your intention. The lesson. Not everyone deserves an explanation, but some people do. Learn to recognize the difference. The 5-minute uncomfortable conversation you avoid today might become the 5-year regret you carry tomorrow. Harsh truth. 3. Your selective approach to relationships means you'll have very few people at your funeral. This one hits different because it forces you to think about your legacy and what really matters in the long run. Sigma males are ruthlessly selective about relationships. You keep your circle small. You don't maintain friendships out of obligation. You don't network for the sake of networking. You don't collect people. This approach has advantages while you're alive. Less drama, less energy drain, fewer complications. But it also has a consequence you probably haven't thought about. When you die, there won't be many people there. Maybe a handful, maybe none, if you've really committed to the lone wolf lifestyle. Now you might be thinking, I don't care. I'll be dead. Why would I care how many people show up? And on one level, you're right. But think about what that small funeral represents. It represents a life lived with minimal impact on others, minimal connection, minimal love, given and received. You'll have been on this planet for 70 or 80 years and only touched a few lives in any meaningful way. Is that really what you want? Not the funeral itself, but what the funeral represents about how you lived. I've been to funerals for men who lived the extreme version of the Sigma lifestyle. 3 people showed up. A couple of distant relatives who felt obligated. That's it. And I remember thinking about all those years, all those experiences, all that living, and it amounted to 3 people in folding chairs. Compare that to funerals for people who invested in relationships, who maintained connections, who let people in. Hundreds of people show up. Person after person shares stories about how this individual changed their life, supported them, made a difference. The harsh truth is that your selective approach to relationships will likely mean you have very little human impact during your time here. You'll be successful, independent, self-sufficient, and largely irrelevant to the lives of others. Maybe you're okay with that. But most Sigma males I've talked to who are facing their own mortality realize too late that they wish they'd let more people in, that they wish they'd made more of an impact, that they wish their life had mattered to more than just themselves. The lesson: you don't have to be everyone's friend, but make sure you're someone's friend. Impact a few lives deeply rather than 0 lives at all. Otherwise, you're just taking up space on the planet for 70 years and leaving nothing behind when you go. Harsh truth. 4. Your emotional self-sufficiency will be tested by tragedy, and it might not hold. One of your greatest strengths as a Sigma male is your emotional self-sufficiency. You don't need others to regulate your emotions, validate your feelings, or help you process experiences. You handle your own psychological maintenance. This works beautifully for normal life circumstances. Bad day at work? You process it alone. Relationship ends? You handle it alone. Goals don't work out? You adjust alone. But then real tragedy hits. Not inconvenience, not disappointment. Tragedy. Maybe someone you love dies suddenly. Maybe you get diagnosed with a serious illness. Maybe you lose everything you built in a way that's completely outside your control. Maybe you experience trauma that fractures your sense of safety and control. And suddenly, your emotional self-sufficiency isn't enough. The coping mechanisms that worked for everyday stress are completely inadequate for genuine crisis. And because you've spent years developing independence instead of connection, you have no support system to fall back on. I've seen this break. Strong men, Sigma males who seemed unshakable, who handled everything life threw at them with calm competence, completely fall apart when something catastrophic happens and they realize they've built a life where no one is there to help them through it. They don't know how to ask for help because they've never needed to. They don't have people to call because they've spent years maintaining distance. They don't have community to fall back on because they never invested in building community. And the isolation that felt like strength becomes the prison that makes tragedy unbearable. The harsh truth is that emotional self-sufficiency is valuable, but it's not the same as emotional invincibility. There are things in life that are genuinely too heavy to carry alone. And if you've built your entire identity around never needing anyone, you won't know how to reach out when you finally do need someone. The lesson? Build your support system before you need it. Maintain at least a few connections with people who you could call in a genuine crisis. You might go your whole life without needing them. But if you do need them, you'll be grateful they're there. And if they're not there, you'll regret that you didn't build those connections when you had the chance. Harsh truth 5. The skills that make you successful will make you a difficult partner. Your analytical thinking, emotional control, independence, and strategic approach to life make you highly effective at achieving goals, building wealth, and creating the life you want. These same traits make you extremely challenging to be in a relationship with. Your partner doesn't want to be analyzed. They want to be felt. Your emotional control reads as emotional unavailability. Your independence feels like distance. Your strategic thinking makes them feel like they're being managed rather than loved. And the skills that served you so well in every other area of life become the exact things that sabotage your intimate relationships. Most Sigma males figure this out too late. They spend their 20s and 30s building their careers, developing their capabilities, achieving their goals. They apply the same analytical, strategic approach to relationships that works in business. And they wonder why their relationships keep failing, why partners keep leaving, why they can't seem to find someone compatible. The harsh truth is that the problem isn't finding someone compatible. The problem is that you're bringing tools designed for success in professional contexts to an arena where those tools don't work. You're trying to solve emotional problems with logical solutions. You're trying to create intimacy through strategic behavior. And by the time you realize this, you've often burned through several good relationships. People who could have been life partners if you'd known how to actually be present with them emotionally, rather than just strategically managing the relationship. The really difficult part is that you can't just turn off these traits. They're core to who you are. But you also can't succeed in intimate relationships without learning to balance them with genuine emotional availability, vulnerability, and presence. Most Sigma males learn this in their 40s after multiple failed relationships. A few learn it earlier, and some never learn it at all and just resign themselves to being alone. The lesson? The skills that make you successful professionally will make you fail relationally unless you consciously develop different skills for intimate relationships. Start developing those skills early. Learn to be present, not just strategic. Learn to feel, not just think. Learn to be vulnerable, not just competent. Your relationships depend on it. Harsh truth. 6. Your time alone doesn't compound like money does. Sigma males understand compound interest. You invest early, let it grow over time, and end up wealthy. So you apply the same logic to personal development. Spend time alone now. Invest in yourself. Develop your skills. And you'll reap the benefits later. And that's partially true. The skills you develop and the work you do on yourself absolutely compounds. But what you're missing is that time itself doesn't compound the same way in all contexts. The best years for forming deep friendships are your 20s and 30s. That's when people have time, energy, and openness to building new relationships. If you spend those years isolated and focused entirely on yourself, you can't get them back later. The best years for finding a life partner are your 20s and 30s. The dating pool gets significantly smaller and more complicated as you get older. If you spend those years alone, you can't recreate that opportunity later. The best years for having children, if you want them, are your 30s and early 40s. Biology doesn't care about your personal development timeline. If you wait too long, that option disappears. I've met Sigma males in their late 40s who are finally ready for relationship, family, and connection. They spent their 20s and 30s alone, building wealth, developing skills, achieving goals. And now they're ready to share their life with someone. But the dating pool at 48 is nothing like the dating pool at 28. Most compatible people are already married. The ones who aren't often have complicated situations, baggage from previous relationships, kids from previous marriages. The easy organic relationship formation that happens in your 20s doesn't really exist anymore. And these men realize too late that their strategy of focus on myself first, relationships later, didn't account for the fact that relationship opportunities have a time limit that personal development doesn't. The harsh truth is that you can develop skills at any age. You can build wealth at any age. But you can't form certain types of relationships at any age. There are windows that close, and if you're not paying attention, you'll miss them. The lesson: personal development is important, but don't use it as an excuse to avoid relationships indefinitely. Some opportunities in life have expiration dates. You can't always do things later. Sometimes later is too late. Harsh truth 7. You'll eventually crave what you spent years avoiding. This is the harshest truth of all, and almost every older Sigma male I've talked to has experienced some version of it. Right now, you probably can't imagine wanting the things most people want. Constant companionship sounds exhausting. Being needed sounds suffocating. Having people depend on you sounds like a burden. A house full of family sounds chaotic and overwhelming. So you build a life that avoids all of that. You maintain your independence. You keep relationships at a comfortable distance. You prioritize solitude and freedom. You create exactly the life you want. And for years, maybe decades, it's perfect. You're content. You're successful. You're living on your own terms. You don't understand why everyone else seems so desperate for connection that you find unnecessary. But then something shifts, usually in your 40s or 50s. The goals you chased start feeling hollow. The freedom you protected starts feeling empty. The solitude you craved starts feeling lonely. And you realize you're craving the exact things you spent decades avoiding. You start wanting someone to come home to. Not just someone in your space occasionally, but someone who's genuinely part of your life. You start wanting family gatherings and chaos and people around the table. The same chaos that used to make you want to leave early. You start wanting to be needed by someone, to matter to someone's daily existence, to be part of someone's life in a way that actually requires your presence. And the truly harsh part is that by the time this shift happens, you've often structured your life in a way that makes getting these things extremely difficult. You've spent so long pushing people away that people stopped trying to get close. You've been alone so long that you don't even know how to not be alone anymore. I've watched this happen to multiple Sigma males, men in their 50s suddenly realizing they want what they spent their entire adult life avoiding. And trying to build it at 50 is exponentially harder than it would have been at 30. Some manage to do it. They put in the work. They make themselves available. They build the connections they previously avoided. But it's hard. Much harder than it needed to be. Others just accept that they made their choices. And this is the life those choices created. They find ways to be content with solitude because that's what they have. But there's often a quiet regret underneath. The harshest truth is that your preferences and priorities will change as you age. But your circumstances might not be flexible enough to accommodate those changes. The life you build in your 30s might be perfect for who you are at 35, but completely wrong for who you become at 55. The lesson: don't build a life so specific to your current preferences that you can't adapt when your preferences change. Keep some flexibility. Maintain some connection. Don't burn all bridges. Because the person you are at 50 might have very different needs than the person you are at 30. And that future version of you deserves to have options. Look, I know these are uncomfortable. Some of you are probably thinking I'm wrong, that you'll be different, that these lessons don't apply to you. Maybe you're right. Maybe you'll be the exception. But I've talked to enough older Sigma males to know that these patterns are real and common. The point isn't to scare you or make you abandon your nature. The point is to help you avoid the extreme version of these mistakes. You can be independent without being isolated. You can be selective without being cruel. You can focus on personal development without missing critical windows. You can maintain your Sigma nature while still building a life you'll be satisfied with long term. But you have to be intentional. You have to recognize that your natural tendencies, taken to their logical extreme, lead to outcomes you probably don't actually want. Most Sigma males learn these lessons the hard way, through regret and missed opportunities. If you're reading this, you have the chance to learn them the easy way, through awareness and intentional adjustment. The choice is yours. But don't say you weren't warned. These 7 harsh truths aren't meant to make you abandon being a Sigma male. They're meant to help you be a Sigma male who doesn't have massive regrets later in life. Your independence, selectivity, and self-sufficiency are strengths. But every strength taken to an extreme becomes a weakness. And most of these harsh truths come from Sigma males who took their strengths to extremes and paid the price later. Learn from their experience. Adjust before you have to. Build a life you'll be satisfied with, not just at 30, but at 50, 60, 70. Because the older Sigma males who figured this out early are the ones who are actually content in their later years. The ones who didn't are the ones living with quiet regret. Which one will you be? If you're an older Sigma male who learned one of these lessons the hard way, drop a comment with the word learned and share which truth hit home and what it cost you. And if you're younger and these warnings are making you reconsider your approach, hit that subscribe button. I share this kind of honest, uncomfortable truth every week because someone needs to. Until next time, live intentionally, not just instinctively.